welcome to the latest episode of Cyber Spotlight. Today I have with me the CEO of Merimetso, Paul Dominy. Paul, welcome.
Thanks, Mina.
So good to have you here. Now, first things first, what is Merimetso? What does that mean? Can you tell us a little bit about how Merimetso came about?
Yeah.
You have the stage.
Great. Well, Merimetso, the word itself is actually a Finnish word for a giant coumaron, which is an aquatic bird. Right. And we decided on the name because several of our founders are ex-Navy.
Right.
And that bird in mythology, in Viking mythology, used to protect people at sea. So Merimetso is a cyber education business. It is the culmination of about, I think I calculated between the 5 founders, about 80 years of experience in the cybers, whether that be directly through consultancy or education or in business. And it started, this is really kind of a third generation of this endeavor. The first iteration was back in 2007 when 2 of our founders, Campbell Murray, who's our COO, and Dr. Andrew Bly, who's our Director of Research and Development, created the Tiger Scheme in the UK. And so the Tiger Scheme was kind of created through the university system where Professor Bly was an academic to help educate people around pen testing. 2013 rolled along. Campbell was kind of thinking about how they modernize that endeavor, and they made a more vocational approach to pen test training. And that now has become what's called the Cyber Scheme, and it is used to educate and train pen testers who want to do any work for the UK government.
Right.
So a few years went past. Campbell and I were introduced through some friends. Andrew came on board, 2 other members of the team, and we decided to expand that approach to not only pen testing, but also digital forensics, incident response, defense monitoring, so that we could bring that practice-based training approach and mentorship to other disciplines within the cyberspace. So hopefully we can go about educating the next generation of cybers, whether it be here or in Southeast Asia, throughout sub-Saharan Africa and Europe.
Fantastic. And I love the fact that you're using a bird.
Yeah.
Because we see wolves and we see, all sorts of fierce animals as symbols of cybersecurity, but I love that you're using a bird. That is, can you actually just show us the logo? Because I can see you're wearing the T-shirt. That's awesome. That is awesome. I mean, you don't look at that bird and think fierce, but then the backstory is fantastic.
We're taking the approach, the hand-on training approach, where we're being that senior, older mentor for the new and up-and-coming people into the industry. Look, lots of grey hair, lots of 16-hour days doing consultancy work, and at this stage of our lives and careers, we wanted to see what we could do for the next generation.
That's
and
fantastic.
So we wanted to guide them.
So it's more of a give-back impact business.
Absolutely.
That's awesome to hear. Paul, I want to talk about Andrew, because you've recently brought him on as a full-time staff member,
absolutely.
Is that correct?
So Dr. Andrew Bly has been a part of the cyber academic space for 25 years. He received his PhD from Newcastle University in the UK, and he was a practicing professor and educator at South Wales University. Dr. Bly has essentially written the book, from our perspective, on digital forensics in 2 spaces. One being how to work with law enforcement and actually upskill law enforcement. So kind of, getting a request for support from law enforcement in the UK, going through that process of helping them investigate and identify trails of evidence, but then not keeping that as a black box, really kind of supporting them in understanding how to achieve that for themselves, upskilling them, and then passing that knowledge on to them. Then they come back, we do another iteration where he finds a new problem to solve, upskills them, and then passes that back to law enforcement. And about 15 years ago, Dr. Bly decided to get into the digital forensic space in IoT and hardware. So has built a lot of standards around how to do digital forensics and pen testing in IoT, OT, SCADA systems, ICSs. And that's one of the reasons why Dr. Bly has come on board, because he spent his career obviously, advancing the cybers and advancing the tech in this space, but also educating people in this space as well.
Paul, you briefly touched on sort of the why you guys have found Merimetso. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that as to what is it that Merimetso seeks to achieve?
Yeah, so as you're aware, lots of governments have spent a lot of money on new programs to educate people in cybers.
Yes.
There's a lot of investment here in New South Wales, there's a lot of investment nationally, and the same is true in North America and in Europe. But one of the things that we see is that governments and education programs are using traditional methods of training, STEAM and STEM, and are applying it to cybers. We find that cybers are best when they are allowed to be imaginative and break things. They learn quicker, they learn faster. It's a very innovative space. People, you talk to any pen tester, they'll spend lots and lots of time just breaking stuff to understand how they work.
Exactly.
So we have taken the approach of training methodology and framework as opposed to teaching people all the command line interfaces for a Kali Linux server. We find that if you take a scientific method approach to all of these disciplines and train people and teach people how to learn, they will come up with innovative ways of solving problems or doing a pen test or doing a test for a customer. And what we can do as mentors for them is actually guide them in the direction of problem solving instead of solving the problem for them. So we give all of our students a very strong grounding in the discipline. We provide them with the ability to learn the frameworks and the methodologies, and then essentially we give them 80% of the classes just practice. Practice. Yep. Break a website, do a SQL injection, understand how to investigate a problem, and just give them the tools that they need to actually go out and learn for themselves. And be there as that mentor and that guide when they have a problem. So we've had students over the years come back to us and say, oh, Campbell, Paul, Andrew, I have this issue. I'm trying to do a test for a customer. I'm investigating this piece of malware. I don't know how to start. And we would just guide them in the direction of that test is very similar to this one you've done before. Maybe go back and approach it from this perspective. And then what happens is you've given them a little bit of overcoming inertia, but they're doing all the learning themselves.
Yeah. So basically providing them with practical ways to solve problems.
Absolutely.
From a legal perspective, from my legal background, one of the ways to come up with your case is kind of to come up with the rebuttals.
Yeah.
That you're so coming up with rebuttals.
One of the things that we find is, especially from the blue side of the ledger or the defensive side, is learning how an attacker thinks allows you to understand how to defend your organization better.
Yes.
So if we can teach from
That's what I wanted to say. But you said it. Exactly right. Coming at it from the other side's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we can teach people who are SOC analysts or people who are law enforcement do this all the time. They bring in ex-criminals or they bring in people who understand how a criminal works so that they can understand how best to investigate those crimes, find those criminals, but also from a defensive security perspective, how do you build a border around or a moat or a wall around your organization unless you know exactly how somebody's going to attack it in the first place. And so that's what we're trying to teach. We're trying to really teach people the frameworks on how to defend based on the insights gained from being on the offensive side for so long.
Okay, so let's talk about your service offerings.
Yeah.
I know that there are three?
Yeah, so what we do is we have several modes in which we deliver work to our training and education programs. We have our consumer products where we actually take people on a pathway through the program. So whether somebody wants to be a pen tester or work as an analyst for a SOC, we have the ability to take them, we have programs to take them through from, coming straight out of high school, giving them some micro-credentials around a specific skill set so they can start being employed soon and really quickly, all the way through to mid-career where you just want to kind of brush up on some of your skills, to potentially doing some more advanced things around, say, hardware hacking or digital forensics in IoT or OT. Then we work with our enterprise clients where we take the structured learning for our consumers. We can actually tailor it to their specific needs. So some enterprises have a team of pen testers who want to be mentored or be upskilled. We can create a program directly for them, and we have done that. Maybe you're a development house with 400 developers, and we want to do some cybersecurity engineering for cloud or for applications and upskill the development group. We think that developers should be developing and not security people. Security people should be the last port of call. A lot of that security should be built into applications
Secure by
really
design,
downstream, really early, so that when you get to the security team, they're not a barrier and you don't have to go all the way back to the start. And then we have a consultancy business as well. The consultancy business is obviously there to support customers and solve some problems. We use it for our education group so that they can maintain currency in their field and really demonstrate that they're practicing educators and not just academics. And we use it as an accelerator for students that might be coming through. So we take on a lot of associate members and juniors in specific disciplines. And hopefully within kind of 2 or 3 years, we've given them the experience so that we can double their salaries and they become a little bit too expensive for us and they go off and do wonderful things in the market. One of the things I think that you'll see is in talking to some of the other colleagues in the industry, they're all thinking, how do we solve the skills gap? But we don't see it as a skills gap. It's really more of an experience problem because people are coming out of university with some really amazing skills. They just don't have the ability to have the experience. And especially in cyber, you can't really put somebody who doesn't have experience in front of a customer because you can cause some serious problems.
For a lot of students
Absolutely.
who do complete these degrees and then come out, and the jobs they apply for require 7 years of experience. Or, it's kind of like, how do you gain the experience when you can't even apply for an entry role position in the first place?
Yeah, so we see that there is absolutely place for juniors to come in and be trained really well on doing, static web page pen tests, for instance. And you do 50 of them, you become an expert in those, you move on to the next piece. And you do 50 of them, you become an expert, and you're building up, like Lego bricks, your experience over time, so that you're then afforded the ability to do more interesting work sooner rather than later.
Okay, so now we're going to do something very different, where we're going to role play.
Okay.
I'm going to be, just to go through the 3 products that you kind of mentioned, I'm going to be a medical practice, and I'm going to contact you and say, hey, I've got my medical practice. We are a large organisation in the sense that we have practices nationally. We have no idea what we're doing cybersecurity-wise. We follow the Essential 8. Outside of that, we don't know. And I'm sorry to be putting you on the spot here, because I know that we didn't go through this at all. So this is completely raw.
This will see how on my toes I am.
Fantastic.
Right? So
that's why I put you on the hot seat.
So an organization like that will have lots of admin staff. They'll have lots of people who are amazing in their field, so doctors and nurses and clinicians. They'll have some IT infrastructure in the back end, but their main focus is patient care. One of the things that I would suggest to them is obviously approach their technology stack very rigorously with a focus of delivering patient care, but educating the frontline staff on the ramifications of cyber on their patients and using storytelling to help give them a semblance of cyber awareness is very, very important. But I think for the back of house team, giving that team some insights into how somebody who will attack healthcare, and healthcare is one of the most vulnerable industries from a cyber perspective. will help the IT infrastructure and the governance team, especially the risk team, to understand where they have to spend their investment dollars so that they're protecting their patients and their clinicians to do the job that they need to do. And one of the critical things in healthcare is the safety around healthcare equipment, specifically around IoT and some of those hardware modules and hardware things that they use. We've all heard stories of, people hacking into Bluetooth thermometers and things like that. Those are kind of, they seem a bit crazy, but they're not, they're used as a vector as opposed to, nobody really cares about a Bluetooth thermometer, but it's an opportunity to potentially steal some patient records. Yeah. And, really having healthcare think about the ramifications of the tools that they buy is important, but we don't want security to get in the way of patient care and patient healthcare delivery.
Excellent. So for my final question, I'm going to ask you this. If I had a magic wand, cybersecurity magic wand, and I could grant you one wish, what would it be?
I think government and the university sector should really look, what they're doing is really wonderful right now, but I think we need to kind of pivot slightly to more of a vocational style, and then really look at how do we train new entrants on small skill sets really well, give them the opportunity to work in that space, whether that is through internships or through joining large enterprises, but giving them the opportunity to work really soon as opposed to going through, a 2-year, 4-year, 5-year degree and then coming out the other end and then going, oh, well, I've done all of this work, but I can't actually do any work. So maybe flip it on its head, find opportunities for them to work, whether they're straight out of high school, they've done, a course like ours or somebody else's, but then work, experience is the critical part for cyber. And then allow them to build up that experience and that credential. So if they do choose to go back into university and do that master's degree or that PhD, they build up a body of knowledge and experience that they bring back into the classroom.
That's it. That's fantastic, Paul. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Mina.
And you'll find the details for Merimetso in the next slide. Please get in touch with Paul and the team at Merimetso to meet your education needs in cybersecurity. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Mina. Appreciate it.